Welcome to the Next Steps to Leadership with your host, Dr. Stephen Oliver. In each episode, we invite experts to share their passion and their leadership journey to help you in your next steps. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, hrcvision.com. Now, here's the host of Next Steps to Leadership, Dr. Stephen Oliver.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Taking the Next Step to Leadership. I'm Dr. Stephen Oliver, or known as Dr. O, and we're really glad to have you today. The purpose of this podcast is to talk about some of the next steps in leadership, and our audience is for younger managers, mid-level managers. I invite senior leaders, human resource managers, professionals in nursing, learning leaders, book authors, consultants, human resource managers, and also business entrepreneurs, just to talk about their careers, talk about some of their successes in leadership, some things that they have learned to impart to younger and newer leaders. However, this podcast is for anyone. We're all taking a next step in our lives and our careers, so anyone can join in. So today I have a really exciting topic, belonging at work. And my guest is Dr. Beth Kaplan. Very excited to have her. So Dr. Kaplan is a belonging and leadership development expert. She is the author of the book, Braving the Workplace. And we're going to talk about this. And she goes into belonging. We're going to go deep into her book. The University of Pennsylvania declared Dr. Kaplan as one of the world's leading experts on belonging. And she's a powerful storyteller and a dynamic speaker. She also works to help to transform organizational culture in organizations. Her client roster includes Carnegie Foundation, the Human Resources Standard Institute Foundation, the University of Pennsylvania, and Georgetown University. And she's featured in HRD Connect. Dr. Kaplan holds a Master's of Education and a Doctorate of Education in Learning and Leadership at the University of Pennsylvania. So very impressive credentials here. Very excited to have you, Dr. Kaplan. So welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Dr. O, for having me.
Great. Well, just wanted to start out. We're going to talk about your book pretty extensively, but I just wanted to informally say hello and ask you, what are you up to right now? What are some of the things you're doing these days?
Oh, love that question. Hi, everyone out there. I am doing belonging, and more belonging. It is my mission to help people feel less alone. And so for me, I didn't set out to study belonging. However, like most researchers like yourself who study their own trauma, I set out to understand why so many people, myself included, feel like they had to prove their worth just to exist in certain spaces. And the more I researched, the clearer it became. Belonging was so complex. Everyone had their own definition, and I knew it was time for a reset. So, as you mentioned, I wrote Braving the Workplace to really give people that reset they needed to really understand their own sense of self and to get their belonging back.
Well, that's fantastic. That's really a big topic and so important today, especially as companies turn over, people come and go. The unemployment is good, but yet it's not good. And so it's really important. I wanted to see if you could give us your definition. As you just stated, there's lots of definitions, but what does belonging mean to you? Belonging in the workplace.
So belonging is the innate desire of being part of something larger without sacrificing yourself. I think we all can agree on that first piece, that that's something that we've always thought of when it comes to belonging, but it's the end part that really forces us to understand how we construct our sense of belonging and how we don't lose ourselves in the process. I will tell you, Stephen, that my search for belonging really led with me trying to fit in. And by doing that, I was sacrificing myself all the time. I thought if I fit in harder, that I would belong harder. And that's just not the case. because fitting in leads you to sacrifice who you are, and true belonging only requires that you be who you are.
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic definition in sacrificing self. We want to come to the workplace as our whole self, but
Yeah.
then what are some things we have to give up by fitting into that organizational culture? Can you say a little bit more about fitting in?
Yeah.
Why do people want to fit in when they first start on a job?
I think there's so many different reasons, but if I had to give maybe some of the top ones, and I'd love this to be back and forth, you tell me what you think. I
Mhm.
think it's because they've made a commitment. And when we join an organization, we join for several reasons. We think values align, we align to the mission, or the aspirational mission is something we want to achieve for ourselves. So people feel like they've made a commitment. You may be leaving a job, to take this one. And so they try very hard to make it work. In most situations, when we enter any place, it takes us all of 7 seconds to feel like we belong or not, to
Mhm.
make that determination. What really hurts us is when we know we're not meant to be somewhere, we stay anyway. So it's very interesting because in the workplace, there's high percentages of people that leave companies within the first 3 months
Mhm. Yep.
of their onboarding period. It's so rare these days that people make it to a full year, and if not longer. So for me, I always think that that commitment is what people holds people in a place, as well as livelihood,
Mhm.
complete livelihood. The thing is, most of us have to work to earn money. It's very hard to just leave and go, especially in this climate. So I would say that most people leave, or sorry, attempt to fit in because of
Mhm.
livelihood and commitment. What about you?
Mhm.
You think so as
Well,
well?
I mean, from where I standpoint, right now I'm doing a lot of leadership development training, and I have, all ranges of leaders in my classes.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of new leaders, and they want to be liked, which is such a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
They don't want to get into conflict. It's hard to write up performance appraisals because they don't want to give bad news. They may not know how to. They want to give feedback to their employees when they do and be liked and be accepted. And as you're mentioning, Beth, to fit into that organization. And it's tough because, as you know, it's not easy to give good feedback all the time. Sometimes you have to give honest feedback that they're not doing well and they need to truly work on some things, and that's tough. Some employees are accepting and they're like, "Thank you very much, I'll work on it." Others are just
Yeah.
emotionally distraught, and
Well,
it's tough.
maybe it's time to reframe the conversation. And I want to start out by saying to the people that are listening, leadership is hard. It's only
Mhm,
gotten harder. This throughout what everyone has been through, especially in the last 10 years, it almost feels like as a leader, you need to be an armed psychologist.
mhm,
And
right.
that's just not what happens. Like, no one gave me psych training until I went to bed, right? And I think reframing the conversation to look at it differently may help the leaders out there. I always want to introduce the concept of care. Okay. So, a
Mhm,
few things, taking a step back. The number one influence on an employee's sense of belonging in the workplace is their manager.
mhm. Yes.
And you may be listening out there and think, duh, that's something I knew already. But what you probably didn't know is the number one thing that those employees want from their leaders. Okay. It's not trust and it's not respect, although those should be table stakes. We talked about that before.
Mhm,
It's care. And a lot
mhm,
of the times I say that, and people look at me like I have 5 eyes or in 10 heads. And
mhm,
that's because you think of care and you may think of kindness and thoughtfulness. But care has a very large spectrum. There is that kindness, there's that advocacy at the other end, and then in between, there's candor and honesty. So while people may feel awkward giving specific
mhm.
feedback, you want to see it as a form of care because not being truthful and not being honest doesn't help you and it doesn't help them. At the same time, it is hard to feel like a good leader these days. But here's the thing, most of us out there got into leadership to coach and grow people, not for all
Mhm.
the fancy
Right.
administrative work we get strapped with. So expanding into that realm of care makes you feel like a better leader and a better human.
Well, and that's so powerful. And that's another ironic thing that you're saying. Just recently in the current leadership program I'm doing, so many of the older senior managers are like these younger workers, why don't they do their work? Why don't they get stuff done? And they're doing checklists and, come in and do the work and let's get it done and move on. And some of the younger employees are like, well, do you really care about me? Do you know me? Do you understand me? I mean, I'm coming here to do my job, but I have a life outside of work. And so that notion of caring, I think, is so important. And so, I say in my programs, get to know your employees, ask about
Yes.
them. Now, be careful, boundaries. Don't get too deep into their lives. Just know what's going on. So that caring is a powerful thing.
It is. You want to make sure that you're meeting employees where they're at, not just in this little Zoom screen, but
Right.
it's important that I know your communication style and you know mine. So if you're a leader out there and you're looking for some practical tips of how to do that, start being conversational, not just by
Mhm.
an agenda that you have to get through. I always say the employee should provide the agenda and you should ask for 10 minutes of that
Mhm.
agenda. And what you want to do there is start asking questions to get to know them. And maybe, a lot of times people say to me, Dr. Beth, it's very hard for me to start those conversations. But there's some really practical things you can do. Like you can say to your employees, what did you go to school for?
Right.
Oh, wait, you went to school for journalism, but you're an engineer. So you clearly went for journalism, graduated engineer, but what did you like about journalism? Oh, you liked writing? There's not much
Mhm.
writing in this job. Is that something you would like to do more of? And guess what? I'm sure there's a need for everyone's team to have more writing, as long as people are able to also focus on the job they need to get done. What you're going to see is people feel really good when you acknowledge what matters to them, when you build space for them to bring those interests into the workplace. They wind up getting their job done the way that they want to see it done, the way you want to see it done, and they have fun doing it.
And so now, Dr. Beth, how might you suggest and recommend that managers do that? Because some, again, as I just said, are so task oriented and I've got to get this work done through my people. If they don't, then I'm going to have to write them up. What might you suggest building that conversation or creating that conversation?
I would start by doing a few different things. I am very task driven. So I'm gonna share a little secret with you. I have to have everything on my calendar. And some people may find it just disingenuous when I say, I sometimes put a reminder, check in on Dr. O. Dr. O has a birthday this month. Dr. O has
Mhm.
an anniversary. By the way, those are two things I can't accentuate enough. People care about their celebrations and they want you to
Mhm.
celebrate with them. It impacts their sense of mattering. When you forget a birthday or an anniversary, you
Mhm.
lose them. You really do, because there's a shame associated. People don't want to bring it up to you. They want you to know. So aside from birthdays and the anniversaries and specific work milestones, maybe just remind yourself that they are people that you need to get to know a little better. Maybe ask some questions. Other questions you can ask are, what did you like about the last few managers that you had? What didn't you like? Harder questions, if you're a little braver, are, what do you like about my management style? Or what can I change to remove interference from you? Or what can I change that makes your job easier? How can I help you? You'll find that if you simply start out your one-on-ones with, how can I help you? It opens a really great conversation.
Well, those are great strategies, and I really appreciate those. Kind of rewinding a little bit to your book in the beginning of
Yeah.
our opening, what are some of the things that happen to employees when they don't feel like they don't belong? I mean, you mentioned turnover within a few months or a short time, couple of years of people who don't feel like they belong. What are some of those things that can happen?
Well, there's a few things, and maybe we'll take it more high level, like you said, around turnover and talent drain.
Mhm.
Employees who feel excluded are 50% more likely to leave than those that feel a strong sense of belonging. And replacing an employee is something up to a minimum of two times their salary
Mhm.
annually, right?
Yep.
Factoring hiring and onboarding and lost productivity. Even more important are the costs that we can't quantify.
Mhm.
Workplace PTSD, anxiety, chronic stress, right? All of these things lead to environments that make it unhealthy, that lack belonging, and the burnout and the
Mhm.
mental health struggles become very real. I always say to people, we underestimate the fact that mental health is so, so fragile. And in the
Mhm.
workplace, there are so many silent killers like belonging uncertainty that really prevent people from being their best and having what we can achieve, our real actualization as humans. So when it comes to the metrics around productivity and retention, they're easy. It's the mental health and the physical health that is completely hard to pin down and measure. What I do know to be true is that the United States alone spends between 450 billion
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
550 billion, which feels like we're killing a fly with a hammer. Because if we were only able to get to some of the root cause and attack this with our leaders to train them appropriately, I think we'd see those costs diminish.
Yes, I agree with you. Now, you just gave a wonderful concept there. Can you tell us more about belonging uncertainty? A little bit more about what that means.
Belonging and certainty, the beauty, and I wish I coined that phrase, I did not, is
Right.
exactly what you think it is. It is when you are not sure whether or not you have a sense of belonging in any location that you're in,
Hmm.
compared to true belonging, which you feel, and thwarted belonging, which you don't have. So it's that middle, it's that limbo. And
Hmm.
no one likes to be kept in limbo. I don't know. I'm
Hmm.
not even patient enough to wait for food half the time, let alone some of the things in the workplace. So it's that feeling of not knowing how we belong to something. I always want to say fit, but that's confusing.
Hmm.
So it's really not knowing where we fit and if we fit. And it's really costly, just that
Hmm.
state of limbo. Not only costly to you as a person, but costly to the team, to the company, and to productivity in general.
Yeah, it is. That uncertainty is really, really tough.
It's a killer.
How about what do you see are some of the challenges and the opportunities for managers to help the employees belong? What are first some of those challenges? Then we'll go to the opportunity.
Sure. So the biggest challenge I believe is that people are not on the same page when it comes to language. Okay.
Hmm.
So it's very rare for people to say to their manager or to their leaders or whoever is in their upline, I don't feel like I belong. If they say
Hmm.
it, my bet is that means they're either going to be doing their exit interview with you next because they've decided to leave, or they're about 80% gone. Okay. So the
Hmm.
biggest challenge is that leaders wait for people to tell them those things. So instead of waiting for the exit interview, do a stay interview.
Hmm.
Understand them a little bit better before you lose them. It's very much the biggest challenge that I see is that managers wait and that
Hmm.
employees don't have the language.
And in my own career being in human resources, you learn so much in the exit interview, and you want to say, if you just told us that,
Yes,
we could have tried to work on it, or at least think about it. But unfortunately, you're either out the door.
it's too late.
It's too late, right? Let me also rewind a little bit. We mentioned onboarding. I have
Yes.
a colleague right now, and oh my God, what a task he has. He's in a healthcare system and he's trying to work with multiple hospitals under one system on, standardizing the onboarding. And he's like shaking his head, beating his head. And he said, I just gave my first day lecture and it was so boring and awful. But there's a longer impact to onboarding and
Yeah.
even nursing, because I do some work in nursing and they have what's called preceptors, which are like
Yep.
trainers, and they go with that new nurse for weeks and months in that first year. Any
Mhm.
suggestions about onboarding that you might have and belonging?
Yes. Onboarding is my favorite part of workplace culture because that's when you have you can make the greatest impact so that
Hmm.
people feel part of what you literally just were on the phone selling them some things. This is where you actualize it, right? So that they know they've made the right choice. So, when you're onboarding, you want to be extremely clear with expectations. For example, if you run a sales organization, you don't want to just give them the numbers and goals they need to meet and say, see ya, now make your goals. Because that's not the only job that you have in sales. There's a lot of ways to get it done and do it right. So, if you're onboarding for a sales organization, for example, then you want to make sure you are giving interactive training that applies to conversational fluency, situational fluency. And I bet it's not just limited to sales, it could be all the situations you have in
Hmm.
the workplace. But clear is kind. That's what you always want to remember with onboarding, that the more information that you can give them, not packed in one sitting and not done the same way. Just like you may learn different than me, all of the students that you have, whether they're doctors, nurses, lawyers, janitors, does not matter. You need to do it in a way
Hmm.
that meets learners where they're at. And onboarding is a great way to make sure that you're not trying to overload them. Here's the problem with onboarding. I feel like onboarding becomes the cup, and
Right.
this is all the information, and we keep pouring and pouring and pouring until it overfills.
Right. Yeah.
So the most important thing you need to do in onboarding is tell people who we are and what we do and why it matters. Everything else can be done in an onboarding learning plan. Like you've
Mm-hmm.
said, it can be done in shadowing and mentoring and through experience. So I would say one of my other pieces of advice is don't make onboarding a point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Make it an experience and give a start and an end to it and measure it as well. Also, you want to make sure that leaders are involved, but not just involved, but that you streamline their activities with new hires so that you, as a learning program, for example, if you have one, are taking on certain responsibilities and you are allowing leaders and their employees to spend the right time together so that
Mm-hmm.
it's focused and it's more nuanced.
That's fantastic. I'm going to send my friend towards your way
Got
and
it.
his committee. That'll help out.
Great.
Um, but I might just add one thing is I
Sure.
think you need to constantly check in with that new
Yes.
employee and
Oh, yeah.
checking in daily, weekly. It's not enough time. It's appropriate to check in with them.
Yes, and not just you. So one of my favorite little secrets, and now I'm gonna
Mhm.
expose it completely, is
Yep.
when I have typically run onboarding programs, I also not only have the leader do it, but the skip level leader. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that they do it, in a canned way, but I'll pop something on their calendar, Dr. O started in
Hmm.
October, give them a
Right.
random call just to see how they're doing. You learn so much. In fact,
Hmm.
I typically have leaders that get a little annoyed when I do it because they're like, "Oh, she's giving me more work." I've
Right.
never had it where I haven't scheduled time for a leader to do that, where they don't say, "Oh my goodness, Beth, I got so much more out of that conversation." I hope they got as much as I got.
Well, and to me, that's also I feel mattered. The skip level, the manager above contacted me. Wow, someone else knows that I'm
Yes.
here. Not
Oh,
just
yeah.
my boss. I feel really special, and I think that's so important. I do feel welcomed.
Yes.
Um, and I love your tagline there, Dr. Kaplan. Clear is kind. I think that's
There's
a great T-shirt that we need to start putting on and walking around with.
yes. Clear as kind, clear as care. Yes.
Yep. So I'm wondering, Dr. Kaplan, if you have a short story about, and you're doing consulting in belonging and in organizational development, any story of success about someone or a group of people who felt belonged in the workplace and stayed a while. I'm sure you've got a lot of them.
Oh, oh, I wish I had as many of as you think, but people typically come to me with their belonging issues, not their triumphs.
Oh, right.
I will tell you a lot of the time that the stories are built are around onboarding.
Hmm.
Amazing. I
Hmm.
joined this company. You actually did what you were going to say, and that's not hard to achieve. What I do is I want to encourage people out there. If you're hearing those stories, capture them, celebrate the wins. Okay. That's important. I will tell
Hmm.
you that my favorite belonging stories are when people feel less alone, hands
Hmm.
down. That being said, it's a fine line between being so invested in work because you can't be loyal to something that can't be loyal back and making sure that the wins that you have are also outside the workplace. You need to have a firm balance because
Hmm.
if not, you start to get into, workplace dysmorphia zone where you become your job. And that's where some of the unhealthiness sets in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So important, really important. So appreciate that. By the way, do you have any models or theories for belonging, or have you created one yourself within your work that you use?
You're gonna be shocked because remember when at the University of Pennsylvania, when you're not supposed to coin phrases, I got to coin phrases. So, I don't have a framework, although I am working with the University of
Right.
Pennsylvania measuring belonging.
Hmm.
Um, I do, however, have distinctions, and I think that's important to note. So, the research that did was considered exploratory because and again, for some listeners out there, it may feel a little more advanced common sense, but belonging is not an all or nothing concept. Okay. If we're delivering this back to the workplace, for example, you may feel a sense of belonging to the company and your team, but not your boss, or the boss, but not the company. and you can make as many varieties as you can with that. So that's important to note. I always like to say I'm a member of a few gyms. It's really sad but true, and one I have to stop paying at this point. But I feel a deeper connection with one of the gyms that I go to. That means that I can have different levels of belonging at different associations. Okay, that's everyone. At the same time, another reason why the research is considered exploratory is because there's multiple types of belonging that were
Hmm.
maybe not
Right.
explored as much prior. So we all knew about true belonging, right? Innate desire to be
Hmm.
part of something larger than ourselves without sacrificing who we are. And we know about thwarted belonging, which is a lack of belonging and an
Hmm.
unfortunate antecedent to suicide. Okay,
Oh,
when people
wow.
feel like they're not, when the world is better without them, or they're
Hmm.
not contributing, or people would be better without them in general. That's considered a thwarted sense of belonging. At the same
Right.
time, there's also sacrificial belonging and dissimulated belonging.
Hmm.
And those are two of the newer concepts. Sacrificial belonging is when you give up a part of yourself for something else. So you may be giving up your mental or your physical health. An example may be I've booked a vacation, but I've got to meet a work deadline. I need to cancel my vacation to achieve the deadline. Okay. It's typically when you put yourself on the bottom of that list because you feel that your sense of belonging will strengthen because of it. Spoiler alert, it does not. Or you're putting the company above your own needs. The other thing is dissimulated belonging.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Okay.
dissimulated is probably one of my favorite types of belonging. It does, if you have dissimulated belonging, it does not mean that you don't have a sense of belonging. It just means you have a sense of belonging that's stronger outside of the context you're in. And most people with dissimulated belonging are very happy people with strong sense of belonging, but within the context, they have to do a fair amount of hiding or covering because we don't reward people that focus outside of the workplace, for
Hmm.
example, right? We praise our corporate cheerleaders, but for the folks that leave at 5 on the dot because they
Hmm.
really need to get to the gym or need to take care of children, that's seen as a ding at times. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not a negative sense of belonging to you, it may be to others around you.
So very interesting concepts. And are you using these in your groundbreaking research with the University of Pennsylvania? Are you using
Yes.
these topics to measure?
We're starting to, because the thing is, what the tool will do is help people understand propensity to thrive. And each one of those definitions has different percentages of whether people are
Mhm.
going to thrive or leave an institution potentially. And they are predictors based on your sense of belonging. So yes,
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to those results. And are you measuring any specific companies or organizations or
not now, not
populations, or
now.
you're not now? You're just getting ready to do
Done it in the past, but it's not formal yet in a sense where it's going from company to company. We're still in the pilot phases.
Okay. All right. Well, very exciting. And just one other question about belonging. Then I wanted to ask you a question about yourself and your um, education. Um, how about belonging and inclusion? How do those two fit in together? Because to me, they're similar, but there's some differences there too.
Oh, I love that question.
Yeah.
Belonging, inclusion, I call them sisters, not twins, because
Right.
if you think about it, they feel the same at times. They
Hmm.
really do. But inclusion is something that others determine, where belonging is only something you can determine for yourself. You may be included, but it doesn't always mean you feel a sense of belonging, right?
Hmm.
So
Right.
there's several examples I can give. I love the university piece. I
Mhm.
went to Penn. Let's just say I applied to Penn because I felt like I was a lifelong Quaker and I wanted to really be part of it, and I didn't get in. Okay. So
Mhm.
that means that I was not included at the University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Now, let's just say I reapply and I get in. Does
Mhm.
it mean I belonged any less? No, it doesn't. It means that I was not included.
Mhm.
So
Right.
sisters, not twins. They may feel the same, but you determine one, others determine the other.
That's great. I love the way you define that and separated. In my own leadership practice, I emphasize including employees, including
Yes.
them in their job description, including them in the work and what they're doing, include them in that performance appraisal,
Yes.
include them at the meeting, hear everybody out. because
Yes.
there are those that talk over everyone. And if you feel like you're more included in what you do, then you will have more loyalty and energy towards your job. So
Absolutely.
I love that definition. So, kind of quickly about you, Beth, what prompted you to go back and get your doctoral degree at the University of Pennsylvania? That's a huge hill to climb.
No one loves this story, by the way, especially those at Penn. Here's the truth. I was having an argument with my boss at the time because I ran
Mhm,
leadership development. And he said to me, I want you to, this is pre COVID, I want you to make all the programs remote. And I said, no, 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 can't do that. Half the magic is bringing leaders together. Right. And so I sent him research, and the research had a pop up for Penn.
Oh wow! Oh my God!
So he replied back saying, oh, you definitely should go. And I had no idea what he was talking about whatsoever.
Mhm, right.
So I live outside of Philadelphia, like in a
Mhm,
suburb of Philadelphia, I should say. And
right.
I
Yeah.
thought, maybe I'll just apply. Let's just
Mhm,
see. I'm like, I'm not getting in, so it doesn't matter. And then I got in, and that's what
right.
prompted me to go. I was To know me is to know I'm an incredibly planned out person. I'm not a sporadic.
Mhm,
I'm rebellious in nature, but
mhm,
planned, if that makes sense. So to go into a situation where I had no expectations, I think was probably one of the best
mhm.
experiences I could have had.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was known for moving mountains and for getting things done with very little pushback, truthfully.
Mhm,
And when I went to the University of Pennsylvania, they effectively taught me how
mhm,
to defend and how to really challenge
mhm,
myself in a new way. So then, of course, I became addicted to that feeling and really being
mhm,
able to stand up for myself. And I think that, you know, the doctoral process gave me a personal rewrite on my own narrative.
mhm.
And so that's why I loved it so much.
Well, I love your story, and I had some similarities myself since I'm a graduate of that program. And once you got accepted, you're like, "Holy cow! Now I got to
Yeah.
go." And
Yes.
it's nothing what you thought about it. The other thing I would add to what you were saying about the program teaching you to defend and support
Yeah.
is the whole evidence base. I mean, I've
Yes.
always asked questions all my life, and the evidence based and research and thought process is so powerful in that particular program. And I love that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out Pen.
Yeah. So how has it impacted your career and your life? I mean, I'm assuming it helped you in this writing of your book,
Yeah.
but how has that doctoral degree helped you out?
I think that it's opened doors probably with the outside world when it
Mhm,
comes to expertise. I think, again, I was in situations prior where I didn't get as much pushback, and I
mhm,
learned effectively how to not only be challenged, but to challenge myself. So
mhm,
I think that I've always been a long
mhm.
learner. I've
Right.
always
Yeah.
been a person who thought of belonging and built community, but I learned to disagree effectively and
Mhm.
respectfully. So to
Yeah.
me, it opened those doors, and also I started to connect to other belonging researchers and other
Right.
people that I admired because I had the confidence to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, and I'm wishing you more books and more
Oh,
stories.
thank you.
So kind of winding down, this has gone so fast. I wanted to just see if you have any final tips or strategies for managers and leaders about helping staff feel like they belong to the company. What are some more things they can do?
I think celebrating the wins is a big one. Don't
Mhm,
underestimate how much people need to feel like they matter, but doing
mhm,
it in a genuine way means that you learn how they like to be praised. Some
mhm.
people like it in balloons and skywriting, and other people like private messages with
Right.
clear examples. So, learning how people want to be praised and celebrating the wins with intention is a really big one. I would also say that you want to make sure you're meeting people where we're at. We've talked quite a bit
Mhm,
about that, but I can't over mention it
mhm,
because I've certainly been that leader that feels like you're not that great at what you do because you're literally just going after productivity and numbers. If
mhm,
you're out there and you've listened to this and you think, "Oh, belonging, it's hokey, it's emotional," then literally go to the numbers. Do
mhm,
you really wanna spend more of your own time re-recruiting people, or do you wanna do it right the first time?
mhm. Yes. Well, it's so important to get people on the right track and to move forward. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I can't thank you enough.
Oh,
So
thank
this
you
is,
so much for having me.
yeah, so this is Dr. Beth Kaplan, a belonging and organizational development expert, a brand new book, Braving the Workplace. Do you want to hold it up again one more time? So check that out. And I just thank you so much for coming today. It's been a great conversation. And I look forward to more conversations with you.
Thanks so much, Dr. O.
All righty. And I want to thank everybody for coming to my podcast, Taking the Next Step in Leadership. Tools and techniques for younger, newer managers or anyone who's ready to take that next step in leadership. If you'd like to contact Dr. Kaplan about belonging and more information, by the way, I'm going to send you my friend
Yes,
his
that works.
onboarding, or contact me, Stephen Oliver, Dr. Oliver, Dr. O at HRC Vision Learning Leadership Consulting. Glad to help you. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today.
You've been tuning in to Next Steps to Leadership with your host, Dr. Stephen Oliver. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, hrcvision.com. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.